Hello and welcome to For Wales, See Wales with me, Will Hayward.
Me, Robin Morgan.
Me, Mel Owen.
And Mark Drakeford.
We've got a guest today, guys.
A returning guest.
Yeah, is it our first repeat guest?
Well, I think in the Senedd ones, we've had people come back to us, but you're the first person that's come back to our studio, but your first time in the new studio, so welcome.
Thank you very much. It's gone very upmarket since I was here last.
I know. Have you noticed we haven't put cheese on the table because it's cost so much money? That's why.
We spent our cheese budget on lighting. It is really, really great to have you on. It's a pretty busy day. So as we record this, we're recording this on Monday morning. Keir Starmer is expected to give a statement at Downing Street anytime. Producer Rob, he's got 6 screens on the go.
He's on Starmer Watch.
He's on Starmer Watch. Now, we are going to do this podcast on the assumption that A, Keir Starmer does step down, or at least sets out a timetable for stepping down. And we're going to also work on the premise that Andy Burnham is a likely candidate to replace him. Don't come at us, Wes Streeting. We know you're there. At any moment, if Keir Starmer does a Wolf of Wall Street and stands there and says, "I'm not leaving."
Yeah.
I would love that. I think he would. I think the tide of public opinion would go towards him if he came out and was like, "Do you want to hear my statement? I'm staying, bitches," and then left.
I found out what I stand for, and it's me. I stand for me.
I think people are like, well, what a baller.
Do you think Starmer has ever said the word bitches?
Yeah, and I feel really bad that I just said it in front of you. I'm really sorry.
For audio listeners, she was talking to Mark Drakeford.
Oh yeah, I say it in front of them all the time. It's what I call them.
It's quite a weird day. It must be. How does it feel as someone who's been within the political world to sort of have a day like this, take place?
Well, I think you feel for the people who are involved in it,
Yeah.
because, I can easily enough imagine what things are like behind the scenes at the moment. People will have been working from very early in the morning, trying to fine-tune what's going to be said, preparing for it. There'll be family to think of. There are people whose jobs depend on you. There'll be all sorts of very difficult things that people will be having to deal with today. So you feel for them on that human level, of course. But this has been a long time in the coming, hasn't it? This day has been brewing, not for weeks, but for months.
Yeah.
And at some point, that boil has to be lanced. And I guess from what we're hearing, today will be the day.
Well, as I look at this, producer Rob is waving furiously. Keir Starmer has said that entering Downing Street was the proudest moment of his life, but has announced that he will resign as Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party. Starmer says he restored trust on the economy and defence, and he said he inherited a Labour Party that was politically, financially and morally bankrupt, and says he was told time and time again the party was finished, but he proved those people wrong.
He said that he inherited a Labour Party that was morally bankrupt.
That's what it's saying on the live blog, which I'm furiously refreshing. He also says...
That's quite a claim.
That's a bit of a neg to all of his colleagues.
He also says he changed the party by ripping out the poison of anti-Semitism and restored trust on the economy, defence and national security. So this is an ongoing thing. So I think by the time this comes out, a lot of unpacking of what he said will have happened there. I always think if somebody's like resigning and they've said like we are stepping down, I always feel like you should just kind of say what you want to say. Like if you want to kind of big yourself up, you want a bit of sugar to take the medicine.
It's his only chance, right? And he's got to go, this is what I actually did.
I mean, it's to say that he took over a party that was morally bankrupt is, I think, quite a statement.
Yeah.
I'm so surprised because because he was asking people to vote for that Labour Party in the general election, but apparently he inherited it and it was morally bankrupt.
I think he's saying he turned it around.
He turned around by the time of the general election.
Yeah, of course.
Wow.
So Andy Burnham looks like the most likely person to replace him. You worked extensively with him when you were First Minister and when he was the Mayor of Manchester. What is he like as a person? What do you think we'll expect? And would he be someone you endorse as Prime Minister?
Well, to the last question first, I will absolutely endorse him. I've already said that I think that he will be my choice to be the leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister. And if I'm able to do anything to help persuade other people, particularly the party in Wales, to support him, then I will definitely do that. What is he like as a person? Well, I'll just tell you one very brief story. So, I've actually known him well before he was the Mayor of Manchester because he was Labour's health Minister, the Secretary of State, and then he was Labour's Shadow Secretary of State for Health when I was the Health Minister in Wales. And he came to Cardiff on a visit, and we decided we would take him to Velindre, to the cancer centre. And we turn up, and it's the usual sort of meeting. There's a lot of people there, you know, the chief executive, the chair of the board, the whole thing. And he was very nice with them. But he explained to them that he hadn't come to be shown around the hospital by the people who were in charge of it, that he was going to go and spend the half hour he had sitting in the waiting room. And that's what he went and did. So, you know, having had 5 minutes with them, off he went. And he just sat in the waiting room, and you know, people didn't really know who he was. There was no announcement of him or anything like that. And he just spent the half hour talking to people about their experience of the service, where they travelled from, what they were hoping to happen. And I remember thinking at the time, he had that really rare gift. You know, it's rare even in politicians who are, you know, sort of in this situation more often maybe than others, of people just warming to him straight away and feeling that he was someone who was going to listen to them and was going to have some understanding of the experiences that they were recounting to him. And as an individual, I think that's what he will bring to this job. You know, there were many, many merits to Keir Starmer, and very unfairly, lots of those merits didn't get a fair hearing during the time he was Prime Minister. But the human level of politics wasn't something that came instinctively to him. It does come instinctively and absolutely naturally to Andy. And I think people will see the difference.
Do you think that's what went wrong for Starmer so quickly, that he didn't understand the human side of things? Because we've spoken on the podcast before about how there almost seemed like a lack of awareness, certain things that were done that maybe weren't morally that wrong, but a lack of awareness of how it would look to the public.
Well, look, it's complicated, isn't it? You know, he's right to point to the difficulties that he inherited. He has been Prime Minister through the most turbulent world series of events that would knock anybody off their course. But the opinion polls show it, and if you've been out knocking doors, you would certainly have heard it. There is a lack of connection on that human level between him as the Prime Minister and the way people feel their lives are led. And that was very hard for him to overcome. And I think Andy just does it naturally.
I think there's the narrative is always interesting, isn't it? And I think the fact that Starmer's been his polling's been poor for a long time, and you know, I heard someone on Radio 4 this morning saying, you know, these are the things we've done, but the story that we've been able to tell over the last 2 years just hasn't happened. Whereas I suppose that anecdote about Andy Burnham seeming like, oh, he's a man of the people, that feels like there is that element that is being told. And I suppose now, well, you know, if he does become PM, how easy will it be for him to sort of maintain that personality and that, look, I'm the underdog, I'm doing this for a region that's underrepresented? How easy is that to do when you are the boss and the person in charge of the country?
Well, it's not easy at all, is it? You know, one of the things that is very different in Westminster to the way things are in Wales is that you lead a very cut-off life. And there's all sorts of reasons for that, mostly security, stuff like that it's just not possible for very senior people in London to do ordinary things like go shopping or just go out for a walk and things. So it will be a struggle for him, won't it? You know, there will be lots of inhibitions on his ability to behave and do things that he has been able to do while he is Mayor of Manchester. But I don't think the essence is different. I think there is something intangible in the way that people get on with one another, and some people have it and some people don't. And if you've got it, you've got it. And, you know, I've met lots of politicians who have got it, and I think Andy is one of them. And despite the constraints, I think that will communicate itself to people.
I hadn't considered the thing that obviously his life's going to change quite considerably. You know, he was pictured going for a run and those kind of things. I mean, like, you can't imagine the Prime Minister just going for I guess the thing that is good for him is that he looks like any other man who listens to Six Music. So I think I think he might be able to get like a body double. Maybe.
There are many men who look like him on Strava. There are many men. But that's really interesting, though. I wonder how much of that will play into like the public perception of him going forward. Well, I do wonder how it will change and how quickly it will change, because people will want such a difference from Starmer. It's easy to promise these things. Is it going to be as easy to deliver them, you know?
As I look at this live blog on the BBC, 500,000 people were looking at it on the View clicker. It says that the NEC, the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party, is going to set a timetable for nominations opening for the leadership on the 9th of July and to be completed by the summer recess. So a quick time frame as things go, but it doesn't suggest that there is someone who is just said a unity candidate who is just stepping in. So it does seem like there could be a leadership race. What would be your reaction to that? What would be your advice to the UK Labour group?
Well, my instinctive view is that it is always better to have a contest, because, contests allow ideas to be discussed, perspectives to be traded. It allows the members of the Labour Party, because in the end, the party belongs to its members. It allows them to have their say in who the next Prime Minister will be. So that's my instinctive starting point, is that. But I do see the case that is being made by others that, the world is facing so many dangerous moments that a hiatus, a gap when there's nobody clearly in charge, and if there is a very obvious leading candidate, would we not be better to recognise that and to have the gap in authority and ability to do things shorter than it otherwise would be? Look, I could make the case in either direction. Both will have upsides and downsides to them.
I'm not asking you to speak for him, but when there is such an obvious candidate, why do you think somebody like Wes Streeting is still being like, yeah, my hat is in that ring? Like, from a politician's standpoint, is there a reason for him? Do you think that he's like, yeah, I think I'm still gonna put my name forward?
Yeah, I think there is, and we've slightly lost sight of this, because it was very common, certainly, in my living memory. When Harold Wilson stood down as Prime Minister, there were 5 or 6 candidates. They didn't expect to win. What they were doing was demonstrating that there was a constituency inside the Labour Party that aligned itself with the views that person was trying to promote.
Sure.
And that, for the person who wins, that says to them, don't forget, my view of the future has to count for something. So if you're Wes Streeting, and if you think you can get 81 people to put your name on the ballot paper, of course he will, if there is to be a contest, he will fight it to win, won't he? He'll do everything he's able to do. But even if he doesn't win, he will put up a marker will have been put down to say, don't forget, there's a strand of opinion in the Labour Party that you can't just ignore. And that was very, very regular, and often people stood for that reason, not really in the belief that they were going to win.
I feel like there's obviously a bit of, as you said, you could either have backed either option here in terms of the time frame. I suppose from an opposition point of view, saying look at all this melodrama, look at while the country burns, you should be running things, and I suppose, backing one candidate and just going for it means that then Burnham can potentially just go, this is my vision. A lot of people have said, radical thinking is what Labour need to do now in terms of just what any leader needs to do. With all the issues in terms of triple lock and health inequality and all these big things that kind of have always just been sort of passed from leader to leader to leader. Do you think that Andy Burnham is the kind of person to be able to go, look, this is to really sell a vision and do this?
Yeah, look, I think he will have a view of the future of the country that he will be able to articulate and communicate with people. And one of the reasons why I'm keen to support him is that while it will not be the very specific things, Robin, that you mentioned, at the heart of it, I think will be a message of hope. And one of the things that I feel has become more and more difficult in this country is that people are losing confidence in the belief that the future can be better.
Yeah.
Somehow they feel we're stuck in a inevitable decline, and that makes people feel unhappy and lots of people feel angry. What I think Andy will want to do and will be able to do is to show that while you're not going to be able to, just wave a wand and fix things, at the heart of his message will be the fact that when we act together and we tackle common problems together, there is a path to a better future for this country. And he will want to, articulate that and embody it. And if we can persuade people, to be more hopeful of the future, it's sort of self-reinforcing, is it? People then start to behave in that sort of way, and that starts by itself to give you a more benign cycle than the rather sort of depressing cycle we've been in. So I think he will have a programme, but I think he will have a message to go alongside it. As we know, that's one of the criticisms there's been of the outgoing Prime Minister, that while you can point to lots of good things that his government has done, lots of things I'm very proud that they have done, there hasn't been a narrative or a message behind it that people can see how all of those things hang together.
On the note of change, that we can't shy away from the fact that a lot of people are turning to parties like Reform because they see hope possibly in the element of change. Do you think Andy Burnham has the strength of personality and character to be able to take on somebody like Nigel Farage?
Oh, definitely. I think he'll be very good at dealing with Mr. Farage and his public school and stockbroker backgrounds. That will be the difference. Andy Burnham is authentic. He is what you see. He is not someone who has manufactured a persona and a personality very different to his own history. And we've seen that in Makerfield, haven't we? There was a constituency that on the day the by-election was called, there were any number of people willing to say that this was inevitably Reform's territory. And in the end, it wasn't. And not just by a small margin either.
I think we'll have a very quick break and then we will talk about what would be a Wales wish list from Mr. Burnham. So I remember when you were First Minister, even before the 2021 election, what you talked about a lot was Devo Max, Home Rule, this idea that anything you can devolve to Wales, you do devolve for Wales. You move to for want of a better word, because it means lots of things to different people, a more federal system in the UK. Andy Burnham has made his name really generally through running a devolved administration, not in the same way as Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland are, but Greater Manchester, a population pretty similar to Wales. What would you hope, realistically, that he might deliver for Wales in terms of long-term Welsh Labour and now Plaid Cymru demands?
Well, I think his starting point is likely to be the Gordon Brown report, which Keir Starmer asked the former Prime Minister to produce, but which has really sat to one side in the first 2 years of this government. So I think Andy will be able to go back to that, because the principle that Gordon Brown sets out is that nothing that is devolved to Scotland could not be devolved to Wales if the Senedd wants it. So that's the additional thing. It will be a matter of the Welsh Parliament deciding whether it wished to draw down powers to Wales that are already drawn down in Scotland. And if the Senedd wanted that to happen, the Gordon Brown report says that is what should happen.
That would be huge, potentially, if the Senedd wanted that, because that would be justice, that would be the Crown Estate, that would be, I suppose, how devolution of things like rail. There is a huge potential for further devolution if that was the mindset of a UK government.
Yes, well, look, that is the starting point, isn't it? And that's why it's important to say if the Senedd wants it, because the Senedd would need to know that it could absorb new responsibilities, and to do that in an orderly way that gives you time to get used to new responsibilities. So, I imagine that Andy Burnham's starting point will be the things to which the Labour Party in Wales is already committed and to which an extent appeared in the 2024 general election manifesto: devolution of youth justice, probation, and policing, given the changes proposed in policing. That will be a very good start. In relation to justice, those are the powers that are already closest to the things the Senedd does. Anyway, a pathway on the Crown Estate. I'm not expecting the Crown Estate to be devolved just on the back of an envelope, but I do think we need a pathway to it where we can plan for it and absorb it in the right way. Gordon Brown report suggested that responsibility for the job centre service should be devolved to Wales so that the Senedd has a full suite of actions that it can take to help people who are looking to get back into the labour market. There's plenty there for him to be getting on with.
Do you worry that, and I'm sure that Andy Burnham has genuinely held beliefs about the principle of devolution, but he gets in. There's a whole long list of stuff. He's got civil servants all around him who say you need to deal with this, this and this. Do you have confidence that it will remain a priority once that day-to-day kind of Westminster inertia settles in over him?
Well, the reason to be optimistic is because uniquely in terms of senior Labour figures, he has seen both ends of this telescope, hasn't he? He has been a very senior minister, cabinet minister in Westminster, but he has also seen what it is like to deal with Westminster if you're at the Manchester end of that telescope. And I don't think he will forget that. I think it's one of the really motivating things that mean he has decided to do what he is trying to do. And when he talks about the absolute imperative to redistribute power, wealth, opportunity, decision-making out of the southeast corner of this country and to other parts of England as well as to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, I think he really does understand it. He has lived through it. It gives him a different perspective.
There almost isn't a better person. If you were one of the first ministers of Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, there almost isn't a better person to become Prime Minister from that point of view, is there?
No, I think, as I say, I think his experience is genuinely unique. There's nobody else you can point to who has had that senior leadership position at both ends of that devolution spectrum.
I suppose I was trying to think if we've had a prime minister before who would have had that experience of devolution firsthand as well. I know Boris Johnson was mayor of London, but it's slightly different for reasons I'm sure I don't need to point out now. But I imagine definitely within living memory he'd be the first prime minister who has that kind of experience of what benefits devolution can have.
And it's difficult to get, isn't it? Because people who have political careers tend to make them in one part of the political spectrum. So it may just be an accident of timing, isn't it? That he had that 10 years right at the very start of devolution in the heart of Whitehall, and he's had nearly 10 years of Manchesterism to bring to the table now.
So would you say the chosen one? That's what you're saying officially? The chosen one?
I'm definitely not saying that. But he wouldn't.
What a coincidence, though, that and it is this time as well, at a time when you've got an independence-seeking party in Scotland, a nationalist party in Wales. Coincidence that you've then got a prime minister in waiting who understands devolution better than any probable prime minister has in recent memory. It will be really interesting to see how that sways public opinion, whether independence will seem like such an urgent thing in Scotland anymore, if maybe some people might say it's not, but whether kind of nationalism will be kind of quelled slightly if you've got devolution being understood better. I'd just be really interested to see in 5 years how people feel here compared to how they feel now.
I think it will be really interesting to have, if we were to have a prime minister who isn't apathetic to devolution, who actually sees it as a really strong vehicle for delivering. Obviously, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown were the people that ultimately delivered the initial devolution, but I think in a Wales context, they weren't in love with the idea necessarily. It wasn't that it felt a bit byproduct to what was happening in Scotland, whereas this is a man who understands that actually it can be a real benefit rather than just an administrative kind of inconvenience.
Because in Wales, in the Senedd elections just now, there will be a lot of people who do not prioritise independence, don't particularly like the idea of independence, but feel that Wales has been shafted for long enough. So we'll have, through maybe gritted teeth, kind of close one eye and put a tick in the Plaid Cymru box. I wonder if having a prime minister who, like you say, isn't just apathetic towards the idea of devolution, but that could be a threat supplied in the next Senedd election, you know?
Well, I want a Labour Party that recaptures the ground that we used to stand on in Wales, because our unique selling point was that we were the only party of devolution. On our right, they were the Tories, who scratched the surface and would have handed us back to London. And Plaid Cymru's raison d'etre in the end is that it believes Wales shouldn't be part of the United Kingdom. The Labour Party used to stand firmly on the ground that only we offered people the best of both worlds. Maximum control over our own affairs while remaining within the ambit of the United Kingdom. And we sort of lost a bit of that in the last election. And I'm hoping that with Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, and interestingly, you see, I think he knows Wales better than he knows Scotland. Because that connection between the northeast of Wales and the northwest of England, that economy. My meetings with Andy Burnham when I was First Minister were often together with people from Ireland because of that bridge from Ireland through Holyhead into the northwest of England, that single economy. So in many ways, I think he has been physically closer and has spent more time thinking about the Welsh dimension of things than he maybe will have had in relation to Scotland.
Can you see him giving the Welsh Labour group a bit of a bump as well in terms of the polls and sort of the popularity? Like if he's seen as a much more popular leader on a UK level, can you see that doing a good job for Welsh Labour?
We will see, won't we? There are opinion polls already that suggest that if he were the leader, it would give the Labour Party a boost in opinion polling, and that will be a boost that will happen in Wales as well. I absolutely hope that it will, and it will put a bit of extra wind in the sails of a party that has gone through a very, very traumatic period.
Well, I remember your last speech as Welsh Labour leader your last conference speech as Welsh Labour leader, and you were stood delivering the speech, and Joe Stevens and Keir Starmer were sat on the table next to you, and every time you spoke about Labour, everyone was applauding. They were loving it. You then, I'm going to use the word mischievously.
Whoa!
I know. I don't.
Some respect.
I don't throw that around lightly. But you started talking, and you made really the centre of your speech electoral reform and changes to the first past the post system. And I've never seen two people sit on their hands faster than Joe Stevens and Keir Starmer. It's like you started talking about how much you loved Labour, but you also wanted to murder them. They looked genuinely, we cannot engage with this is something we're not keen on. Andy Burnham has indicated a preference for electoral reform. Do you think that it would be something that would be realistic for the next election, the next Westminster election? Labour have got a huge majority. Do you think this is something that could happen? Would you want to see it happen? Do you think he would have an appetite for that?
Well, look, I definitely would want to see it happen because I'm a convinced believer in PR and have been for the whole of the time that I've been involved in politics, in days when it was very unpopular in the Labour Party, and of course today it's the policy of the Labour Party, and it's something that Andy Burnham supports as well. Can you achieve it in 3 years? Well, I'm talking about my own preferences now rather than Andy Burnham's preferences, and he'll be constrained in a way that I am not. But if he was able to do it, in that sense of needing to demonstrate that the possibility of genuine and radical change has not left this country, there are things that he could do. He could announce the abolition of the House of Lords. He could announce that in future the second chamber will meet in Birmingham, not in London. Why does it have to be in London? Why can't it be in some other part of the country? The Gordon Brown report advocates abolition of the House of Lords and its replacement with a chamber of the nations and the regions. That will be very consistent with what Andy has been saying. Can you do it in 3 years? Well, it's probably quite difficult given the sources of resistance they would be. Can you achieve full-blown PR? I think that, again, just in terms of the technicalities of electoral officers and maps and voting systems. But I think you could get as far as AV, which for me is not the end point, but is a decent starting point, because that retains constituencies, it retains the map.
Could you do STV under the current system instead of having it as first past post?
No, you couldn't, could you? Because
For
STV...
our listeners, AV, STV.
AV is alternative vote, and STV is single transferable vote.
Thank you, Will.
And for that to work, you have to have bigger constituencies. It doesn't work on a single member constituency. The alternative vote system can work that way. It is a more proportional, but not really proportional system. I think you could do that in 3 years because lots of the building blocks don't have to change. So we will see, I hope he has a radical appetite for reform, but I know very well when you're in the position, you will be surrounded by precautionary advice that soon begins to have its impact on you.
Can I just ask, you said there about why not just move the House of Lords to sit in Birmingham? Is there any other kind of quick things that you could, probably won't move the needle massively in terms of how people live their lives in this country, but are demonstrable ways of saying change is possible and we mean business? Is there any other things you can think of?
I think there are things, and lots of them, as I say, they're in the Gordon Brown report. We know that devolution is very vulnerable, that lots of the things that we thought protected it turned out to be conventions. And when you have people who don't respect conventions of the Boris Johnson variety, lo and behold, devolution isn't as safe as you thought it was. So Gordon Brown says, you legislate, you put that on a statutory basis. You say that the House of Commons cannot interfere with that statute without a 2/3 majority. Now, these are very big changes, but they're doable and they could be done within the time that Andy Burnham has got. And in a way, it's about the message as much as it is about the measure. It's about saying to people, I'm not here to tinker. I'm not here to say to you, what do we want? Incremental change. When do we want it? In due course. That is not the slogan that I think he will want to run.
Very inspired.
Sorry. I did it again, once again with feeling. But, that sort of approach to politics, I don't think will cut through.
Yeah.
Some more radical, in some ways more symbolic decisions need to be made early on to demonstrate he's a different sort of leader.
And as you say, those things that might take too long to do before a general election comes in, if he can prove, look, these are the things I've done in my first 2.5 years, and then you put that in the manifesto ahead of, well, this is what you're going to get with me. You're going to get real radical stuff if you vote for me over Nigel Farage. That feels like a mandate then, doesn't it? Trust me, I'm the person who can bring the hope back.
You've got to build a platform, and you can certainly do that in 2 out of 3 years. But that platform's got to be credible, and it's got to communicate a message, and then you use that, as you say, to get a mandate for completing the more radical end of that journey.
I think this podcast is going to be highly unusable if Andy Burnham says, I'm not running for leader.
You're going to have to come back.
We'd have to re-record it.
Imagine being Keir Starmer, right? And you've resigned on the basis that Andy Burnham is going to kick you out. And then Andy Burnham was like, psych.
I'm running for Mayor of Manchester.
I just wanted to be MP for Makerfield. That's
all I wanted. Imagine.
I want to talk briefly about some speeches, some interesting speeches inside the Senedd.
Well, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to walk out. I'm sorry.
Well played, my friend. Let's have a quick break while we rehydrate, and then we will go again. So we've talked about the small issues like who's Prime Minister, where the House of Lords is going to sit, big, how we elect our governments of the future. That was all just a little mouse-bouche ahead of what we really need to talk about, and it's some powerhouse oratory inside the Senedd. Now, you might not have heard of Joe Martin, but he has given one of the most powerful speeches I think he has ever given. It is... I mean, I'll let it speak for itself because it is so strong. Now, as you watch this, I want you to look at fellow Reform MS Sarah Cooper-Lassard, who is sat next to him, and I don't want to put words in her mouth. I don't know how she felt about this. Her face suggested that she found it a little bit distasteful.
The good news is we found £9 million for your childcare idea. The bad news is you are going to have to stop funding some of the most pointless schemes known to man. You'll be familiar with these schemes, of course, because your party's made you defend them during the election campaign. But I should say all of these are real uses of taxpayer money. In one scheme, for example, in Peru, we fought climate change by providing the indigenous Wampi tribe with solar-powered canoes. In Uganda, we advanced gender equality with a beekeeping scheme, somehow. And obviously, we send... No. And obviously we send Uganda money to plant trees as well, because we won that competition. Who can find the stupidest use of taxpayer money? We actually asked some Ugandan people what they thought about Wales' scheme to send them money for trees. And they said, why are you sending us money for trees? And we then asked the same question to some Welsh students who'd been through our underfunded education system, but we didn't get a reply because we'd emailed them and they couldn't read. And then have a look at illiteracy rates for students graduating. And then finally, we spend £5 million on mini-embassies across the globe. In India, one of the functions of those mini-embassies is to recruit nurses to come and work in our NHS, which is great because it means that the Welsh people who would have otherwise become nurses can instead go on universal credit. I have inquired as to why we can't just have an enormous pit where we burn all the money, but apparently that's not compliant with net zero. Not everyone thinks these are stupid ideas, of course. I did actually receive an email from a constituent the other day in favour of these schemes. I'm joking, I didn't.
I'm going to leave this because I don't accept any of this and I don't want to be a part of it, so I'll be leaving the chamber.
Yeah, Diane. Yeah, Diane.
You know, we've had the Barack Obama, yes we can. We've had the Mamdani, turn the volume up. And now we've had Joe Martin's, I hate beekeepers for some reason.
I mean, he...
Speaks for itself, right?
It speaks for itself. It was, excuse me, ChatGPT, can you write me the shittest best man speech that's ever been written?
Oh yeah, it was like a really bad stand-up set. Like we've sat through enough open mic nights where it's like, I can see what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You just don't have the skill set to carry it off.
I see what the goal was.
Yeah.
0 for execution.
Pause for laughter. 3, 2, 1.
It was pretty poor, but it felt like a campaigning mode, didn't it?
Was that the first time that you'd seen it?
Yes.
Yeah, so what would you mind me asking what your live reaction is?
Well, it's pretty grim, isn't it? You know, it's full of offensive nonsense. Attempting to do it in a way that was, I guess, he thought he was being funny.
I think he was trying to be Farage.
But,
I think he was trying to be that kind of guy.
Well, clearly he hadn't read his audience.
Yeah.
So, I don't really want to talk about that because I think we've pretty comprehensively broken down some of the issues with that in previous pods. But Plaid Cymru, lots of Plaid Cymru MSs, some Labour and some of the Greens left the chamber after that in protest. Now, I think we have different opinions on whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. I think it is a seismic mistake and a massive missed opportunity.
I mean, I get how it could be a mistake if you have somebody to be able to then make an intervention and to sort of put him down, so to speak, and sort of redress those debates. But then it just seems like it's just getting tit for tat. Whereas I think we're not going to engage with this. This is just childish nonsense. So and there are standards which you need to hit in the Senedd. I think I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all.
I agree with you. You know, I don't think it's a massive protest. I don't think it really shut him down by leaving. I think there's a way of politicking, which is answering him, talking back to him, you know, having those debates. At the end of the day, that's what our elected representatives are elected to do. But on the other hand, there's a way of saying, if you're not going to engage in mature politics, why am I going to sit here and pretend that you are? You're not worthy of that time, energy. If you can't turn up like a mature, capable politician, why am I doing here?
The fact that they walked out made it a story. The fact that, this was on, front page of the BBC Wales news website, and you just go, oh, okay, would his lovely bit of oratory have made the front page if they hadn't walked out? I don't know.
So some MSs did stay and kind of riposte to it. So Gwyn Williams, Hugh Thomas, Paul Rock, Dathyd Tristan as well stayed and did make strong responses. My reason why I think it was a mistake to go, there's a few reasons. The first is, if you're in a pub and someone has been a prick, then you're perfectly within your rights to just move away from them, not engage with them. If someone does that on social media, you're perfectly within your rights to do that. These people were elected, and however reprehensible you find their views, Reform didn't pretend they didn't believe any of this before the election, and they've tricked people into voting for them. 29% of people knew what they were by signing up for, and they drank that Kool-Aid, and they've sent those people into the chamber. And I don't think it's right to disengage with them, however distasteful you find what they're saying. I also think if you are Reform and you said to them, what would you like opposition MSs to do here? I think they'd have said, oh yeah, walk out. Because what they can say to all of the people who voted for them is, we're trying to raise your views. They won't even talk to us. But the main reason I think important to engage with it is it's so easy to respond. As we say, these are not great orators. These are not master debaters. These people are very easy to respond to. And I think a more powerful response would be to systematically break down every single flaw in all of those arguments.
Can I just point out, though, that as somebody who has worked, I used to work for an MP who was within the Welsh Conservatives, and I was the only woman in the office. I shared an office with some young male Tories who had very strong views, and it is inherently difficult to argue with the arrogance of people who believe they are absolutely right. You can't, and I stopped. There was no point. You could answer each of his points. He's not listening. He believes everything he thinks.
But you don't need to convince him. You're there to represent the people who voted you to oppose this person.
But I don't think you're also going to be convincing the Reform voters. If there's a clip of him saying those things and then a rebuttal clip of each of the points he's made, that's a 10-minute clip. A Reform voter who wants him to say this isn't going to watch that. I think walking out is a response. It is a statement.
Yeah.
I think I honestly don't mind it.
But also, there are really legit, I support Wales overseas spending. I think there's actually strong economic arguments for doing it. It's economic development as much as anything. But if you cannot justify why you're spending that public money, why are you spending it? I think there is an argument to be made. But I think, firstly, you should be able to articulate why this is a good thing. However distasteful you find that person, I think it's really, I think it's an absolute gift to them.
I think the gift that they've given is that they've made it go viral, like you say, Rob. Without the walkout, this wouldn't have been...
But a really good response. If someone had said, I understand that part of the frustration is the day before, Mr. Martin had made comments about Sudanese people, and there was a member of the Senedd who is of that origin. And I think this was a hangover from being angry about what had been said the day before, a perception that the speaker wasn't getting a handle on it enough. So it wasn't just about this particular thing. But imagine if someone had stood up and said, well, actually, let me break down all the ways you're wrong. Firstly, my family didn't originate here. And
that's not clicky. People aren't engaging in
but
that
it would. I mean, sitting opposite me is a man who got very angry in the Senedd once, and it went viral.
How do you feel like you would have responded in the chamber had you been there?
2 points, really. One is, when you hear the clip, what you don't get at all is the level of noise in the chamber. The chamber is not like that. That person's got a microphone in front of them and every other noise is filtered out, more or less. When you're in the chamber, you're in a cockpit where people are shouting. It's very hard to hear. Right. The atmosphere is very heightened, and people do respond in ways which are sort of triggered by the moment, and you don't pick up any of that when you watch it in that sort of way. So I think the way people reacted is completely understandable. The most powerful protests I've ever seen in the chamber is complete silence. If you know someone is going to be saying things that are straightforwardly offensive and inaccurate, the best way to pull them down is to sit there in complete silence. And when they finish, they sit down, and then somebody does what Will just said. Somebody gets up and calmly and coolly makes the opposite case and demonstrates how much more powerful that case is than the one you've heard. So, it's very hard to put yourself in that position. I entirely understand why people reacted as they did. But for me, I'm a bit more with Will, really. You're there, but don't dignify it by, engaging in a sort of brawl with somebody who absolutely isn't,
Did you see Shav Taj, what she said? She responded today from New Labour MS. I won't play the whole clip, but this was kind of how she began, and this did go viral.
Shav Taj.
First Minister, like many in this chamber, clearly, I share the fact that I am a proud child of immigrants myself. And I'm also really proud of the fact that my late father chose Wales over and above England, where he first arrived. He came here, he looked around him, and actually the community of Bridgend and Port Talbot made him feel welcome. Now, the nation of sanctuary ultimately is about keeping our communities safe. And when people are coming over here, and quite often people are coming here temporarily because they are seeking refuge because they are scared.
The problem with, and I watched the clip, and I think it's a very it's engaging clip. If you are somebody who shares her morals, that is not turning somebody who watched Joe Martin. No, and I'm saying this as somebody who operates in a world as the daughter of an immigrant. I know how it feels to be in the world as somebody like that, and people have their opinions, and that will have been really moving to people who are empathetic, who like immigration, who are respectful of people of colour. If you were somebody who engaged with Joe Martin's oratory masterpiece, you are not seeing that and changing your mind.
Are you going to change your mind because some people have walked out?
No, I think those are two separate conversations, but I would say that we're getting into this tit for tat politics, which really worries me, and I feel like we're getting so extreme in our politics as well. That how do you get people back from one side?
I have total sympathy to people who hear something reprehensible and say, "I'm not engaging with that. Screw that." But when you're an MS, you're not there for you. You're there for the people who voted for you. And if you voted for someone, said, I am going to stand up against reform, and then the first time reform say something a bit shitty, you leave, I'm like, well, no, fight for me.
Sure, yeah. It'd be interesting to know, because it's a bleak thing to say, I can't imagine that's the only time we're going to see some suspect things said in the Senedd by a reform member. So it'd be very interesting to see how people play it now. You know, we've had an example of it. Is walkout there? You know, do parties have those? Would not being whipped in that way, but would there be a policy of if person X says this, or was it just an individual's response?
I doubt there was any policy at work. People were just responding to what they were hearing at the moment. I just want to say, I don't regard anything that Shavana Taj says as being polarising. I don't regard her view as the equivalent of the other view, but just on the other side. I think she is talking for the decent majority of people. Not everybody, and there are some people you'll never convince, but most people, I think, still in Wales understand that people come here from other parts of the world. We're often lucky that they do. Our NHS wouldn't work without them. And that welcoming them and giving them a fair chance like anybody else is absolutely what we would want to do. It's not, a polarised view of a small number of people who would believe that anyway.
I wish I could be that optimistic, but I think if we look at how many people voted Reform in the Senedd election, and I think when you experience Welsh, living in Wales as a woman, as a person of colour, it's really difficult to be that optimistic.
I absolutely respect that last point. Now, what I know, I can't know that. But in the election, 60% of people in Wales voted for parties who would describe themselves as being on the progressive end of politics. And 40% of people, even if you include people who I wouldn't include, like, some Conservative Party members would never, ever sign up to that sort of awful stuff. But even if you put them all in, you've got a 20% gap. These are not too closely contending. There is a clear majority of people in Wales who continue to have progressive, decent views. We have to articulate those things. We have to say to them, you're not on your own. Other people believe those decent things as well, even when you're having to listen to someone who very clearly doesn't.
But yeah, it's what a lovely time to be alive.
It is. What a lovely time to be engaged in politics.
Yeah.
And a very exciting day, really. Thank you so much for being here on...
Well,
we didn't plan it to be this way. I mean, coincidence that Keir Starmer stood down and you came here.
He knew you were coming on.
Keir Starmer knew you were going to call for his head on the last bit.
I can't do it.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
They started recording at 9:30. Let me get out there at 9:00.
We need to wrap up because it is 500 degrees. You need to get a train. But what are you up to at the moment? what's like going on in not right now. What's going on? What's kind of post politics?
Well, loads of things really. So it's busy. What it doesn't have. This is the thing that strikes me the most. When you've been in work, the week has a rhythm to it. A pattern to it.
A regular, reliable rhythm.
Indeed. Certain things happen on certain days, and the week has a pattern to it. So while I am busy doing things, there's no pattern to it at all. It's just different things on different days. Maybe it'll settle. These are very early. Very early days.
You were describing the life of a freelancer. Yeah. We know exactly how you feel.
I guess that's right.
You ever found yourself watching The Chase?
No, William.
Don't be ridiculous. Mark Drakeford, thank you so much for joining us on For Wales See Wales. My name's Will Hayward.
My name's Robin Morgan.
My name's Mel Owen.
And I'm still Mark Drakeford.
This is a Heyman Media production. As you've heard, their studio is amazing. You can book them for commercial opportunities in podcasting, video and pictures.
Bye-bye.
Bye.